Hello and welcome to the Autism, ADHD and Us 3 podcast with me, Jenny Lucas. We'll be talking all things neurodiversity, including late diagnosis, parenting and everything else that comes in between. This podcast is not intended to be diagnostic. I am not a doctor. These are our personal experiences peppered with research and occasionally the experiences of others. The podcast is intended as a supportive guide through the experience of parenting neurodiverse children as a late diagnosed person, hopefully bringing some more relatable stories and laughs along the way. Any relevant links will be in the show notes. Let's get into today's episode. Welcome to today's episode 2 of the podcast, and thank you so much for the people that left lovely comments about episode 1. I genuinely was astonished that you'd taken the time, so I really appreciate it. And if anybody fancies leaving a comment or a review or anything on the podcast this week, I would greatly appreciate it, because all those little things just add up to sort of spreading awareness about it and getting it pushed out there so that more people get to have a listen. So this week I wanted to talk about executive function and executive functioning. And this is actually going to spread over more than one episode, because you could basically do a whole podcast series on executive functioning, because it is such a massive topic and it's so in-depth and there's so much to it. And it's pretty individual. Everybody's got their own individual sort of executive functioning profile. Now, executive functioning, I think you could probably describe as like the master computer aspect of your brain. Is the functioning of all of the basic functions that your brain carries out on a daily basis. It's essentially the mental processes that help you plan, organise, start work, initiate stuff, manage your time, do switching between different tasks and regulating your emotions. So it's the supercomputer that helps your brain function. And so there's some bits of it that I want to talk about today, give a little bit more of a definition of what they are, and then give you some examples of how executive dysfunction, i.e. when those things don't work properly, how they show up for me as a late diagnosed individual, and for my 2 daughters who have been diagnosed, I think you could say, at an appropriate time, not late. So the first one that I want to delve into is working memory. And I had an idea of what working memory was through being a teacher and having worked with children that were classed as having special educational needs or learning disabilities. Working memory is essentially the part of your memory that stores information as you're going. So if you are talking to somebody and they give you a phone number, for example, working memory is the part of your memory that stores that information, that phone number, until you get to write it down. So it's like short-term memory that you use in the process of doing something else. You would use your working memory to work out maths equations and maths problems and different things like that. It's the thing that when you stand up and you go, I must do this thing in the kitchen, that by the time you've got to the kitchen, you forget what it is that you were going in there for. That's your working memory. So already, I'm sure you can probably see why having working memory that isn't functioning properly can be a bit of an issue. So I'm just having a little look at with the definition that I've got here. It also can refer to the ability to control impulses, to resist distractions, and to maintain your focus on the task at hand. So if you are a suspected ADHDer out there, or a diagnosed ADHDer out there, you can already see how maybe your working memory might be something that is not working optimally for you. Working memory for me causes me issues. In fact, it's probably one of the things that I first noticed was going wrong as I was sort of in burnout and hitting perimenopause. It was my working memory, and it was things like recalling words that I needed in a sentence. And actually for a little while I was worried that I had like early onset something going on in my brain, because I would really struggle to find the words to express adequately what I wanted to say, or I'd forget what I was talking about halfway through a sentence. It was really worrying and quite scary for, when you're in your mid to late 30s and you think this is actually, I should not be having a problem with this. Or I'd be standing in front of a classroom for children and would like not quite lose my train of thought, but wouldn't be able to satisfactorily finish the sentence that I was in the middle of trying to get through, or trying to give feedback to people. It was really challenging to try and recall the things to adequately describe it in the way that I wanted to. But also that idea that, again, holding down information. So I can still remember my phone number from when I was a child growing up, my grand's phone number, those little things. But if you were to give me a phone number to remember now, I've had my phone number for like 20 odd years. If I was to get a new phone number, I think I'd really struggle to commit that to memory. I would struggle at this point in time. So that is really challenging for me. And I have to constantly write things down or leave myself voice memos. But I have to put a reminder either on my Talking Smart device. I won't name her because she'll kick off. Or put a note in my phone or put a reminder in my phone, because otherwise I just forget. And the idea of going through a doorway and then forgetting, it's bonkers. But anyway, so that's how it impacts me. The idea as well about controlling impulses, it's really interesting, because if you have got ADHD, for example, one of the things that they say we can struggle with is managing money, and overspending and getting into debt can be a bit of a big deal. People joke about the ADHD tax, like, oh, because I forgot that I already had a cupboard full of toilet rolls and I bought more toilet rolls, and or whatever, I bought 2 of something because I forgot I already had it, or I've missed flights because of getting the information mixed up, or all of those sort of things. People sort of joke about the ADHD tax, but it's a genuine issue. We do live more expensive lives because of our working memory issues, our struggles. And the ability to control impulses, it's really interesting watching that in the girls, because they struggle a little bit with the idea of not having instant gratification. And you could say, oh, well, that's just this generation. They're used to having everything now, instantly. But it's like talking to them about the concept of waiting for something or building up for something. So little one, for example, we still haven't got names to call them. So my youngest probably struggles with this the hardest. And we have an app which we use unsuccessfully at the moment, but has been successful for doing chores in the house. And it's quite gamified and it's quite expensive. I don't know if I'll be renewing it this year, but we'll see. I can talk more about that in another episode if you're interested. But they can earn these game coins, right? So in the game, they've got pets that they feed and they can use their game coins to buy them food. But also we have set up real life rewards that they can buy. So they can purchase like a pocket money boost, or they can do a fidget lucky dip, or there's a few different options that we've put in for them. And I've been really, really struggling to get youngest to play the game, if you like, to get involved and take part in just ticking off. And I put on like stuff that she's doing anyway, like getting dressed for school, making your own breakfast, or choosing a packed lunch if you want to. Little things like that she's already doing, but I thought it'd be a nice, easy way for her to earn some coins. Anyway, we've got a bit of PDA going on here, I reckon, and so that has become something that she's not been doing. But she did want some pocket money for something. She wanted me to spot her some money for something. And I was trying to say to her, she was in despair a little bit about, oh, it's going to take me ages to get this money, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, if you just go into the app and tick off your chores, then you're going to get the money. And in a few days' time, you'll have saved enough coins to buy a pocket money boost. And would she listen to the logic and the reasoning of that? Oh, no, she wouldn't. She couldn't see past, I need the money now. Not in 3 days' time if I go and tick off my chores and then I'll save up the coins and I can buy a pocket money boost and that's an easy way to get money. She was like, no, I need it now. And the idea that it was going to take a few days, and it's probably also actually tied into the PDA idea that was a suggestion that I made to her, and then it became a demand and she didn't want to do that. But that idea of, if I just do this for a few days, I will have the result I want, is like, no, I need it now. Or if they're at the shops, like my big one, she she has buyer's remorse. At the age of 11, she already experiences buyer's remorse. Because she'll see things and she'll get that little thrill of excitement of like, oh yeah, this looks good. Oh, I could really use that, or that, you know, shiny, whatever. And then she'll buy it, and then she'll come to me later and she'll say, Mummy, I didn't really need that. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that. And we're working on self-talk with her about like being kind to yourself and giving yourself grace. But she struggles with the impulse. She struggles with the impulse around food as well. The have it now, regret it later situation. And it's fascinating and frustrating all at the same time, because I don't know how to help them with it. And it's also the acceptance that actually maybe there isn't going to be a way to help them with it, because that is something that they genuinely struggle with. So it's around awareness and making them aware that that is what's happening and that's what they're experiencing, so that maybe in the future, if they have the awareness, they can stop and ask themselves, actually, especially with the impulse buying or eating, do I need this now? Am I hungry? Could it be something else? Could I come back to this purchase later and decide whether I still want it? To sort of almost like build in those little buffers, if you like, to try and help them control that impulsive behaviour, but also to have acceptance that sometimes they're going to fail at that, and fail's the wrong word, but they're not going to be able to wholly control those impulses, and that's just part of how their brains work, and they shouldn't feel any sort of shame around that. But you can see as well, when it talks about being able to resist distractions, if you can imagine being in a classroom, if there is something going on that is more interesting perhaps than what it is that you're supposed to be doing, it can be very difficult to direct your focus to the thing that you're supposed to be doing, because you're getting a little dopamine hit from the fun thing or the distracting thing or the naughty thing that is happening in the classroom that is drawing your attention. And so it can be really challenging. That's kind of what I would class maybe more as a classic presentation of ADHD. I hate that term, but I don't know what else to call it, in terms of that being unable to resist the distraction of something going on in the classroom, and therefore distracting others and being distracted. That's kind of like a key marker, if you like, I suppose, of the hyperactivity version of ADHD. I do struggle with that myself sometimes. I struggle with task initiation is another one of the things that is part of this executive dysfunction, and I really struggle to sit down and start a project, like recording a podcast, for example. There's a little bit of perfectionism comes into it for me, but the getting started, that was always the same for me, always throughout my whole life. Schoolwork, homework, uni work, projects that I'm doing at work, the actual act of sitting down and getting on with it, it almost makes me feel sick. Like, it almost makes me feel nauseous. It's like trying to push through an invisible wall to get through the other side of like actual functionality and productivity, if you like. And so I use music quite a lot. I've always used music. If I really need to get focused and do something, I'll stick some headphones on, put my earbuds in and put on a playlist, and then use that to get me focused. And then I can do like 8 hours worth of work in 2. Hyper focus. But getting to that point is difficult because it is not a regular, I don't have regular control over that task initiation. And if something better comes along or something more interesting, I'm off. I'm away. I'll see you later. Although I miss working in person with people, I work from home most of the time at the minute. When I was in school, if I had a free period or some time to do some work and I was not in the zone, you would find me wandering. You'd find me in the lunch hall or somewhere that I could get snacks, like in the staff room if there was biscuits, and there I would be. Or I'd be wandering around to my friends' classrooms to see if they were teaching, to see if there was just anyone that I could hang out with, because I would far rather do that than actually sit down and do the planning or the marking or the whatever it was that I was avoiding at that time. And I don't know about you, but I also struggle with blocks of time. If I've only got an hour to do something, I cannot
I cannot live with that. Like if I've got something that I need to do, I need a whole day that I know I'm not going to have any distractions, that I'm not going to be needed for anything, that I'm not going to need to go anywhere. It might not take me the whole day to get the thing done, but like if I have got something else that I need to do, even today when I've got school run to do in a little while, and it was like, oh, the idea of being able to sit down and record this, but I've got the school run to do, and it almost feels like claustrophobic, like panic, like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have enough time, or I'm not going to use this time wisely, or whatever. And that almost gets in the way of, well, it doesn't almost, it usually gets in the way of task initiation as well. So there's like this idea of time pressure. I'm going to talk a little bit more about time in a bit, because that is coming up later on. So the next part of executive function / dysfunction that I wanted to talk about is planning and organisation. Now, for me, this is where I think my autism and ADHD are at odds with each other, because the autistic part of me, and I know that I'm fully autistic, but in terms of the way that I'm categorising my brain, I can be excellent at organisation. I like to be organised. I like my spaces to be organised. I function better in a space that is clean and tidy and organised. And I have got tidy folders in my laptop for most things. I like things that make sense. I loved having a planner at school. I didn't fill it with desperately relevant stuff. I'd write a couple of sentences for each lesson that I was teaching. We're not talking reams and reams of planning here, but I liked having it laid out. I have got a calendar app on my phone which we use as a family, and I like the organisation of having things that are colour coded. I used to have a colour coded timetable when I was at school, when I taught in a school. I love things to be organised, and I love planning things. However, the ADHD part of my brain is the spontaneous one. Love spontaneity, and is bored by sitting down and planning things. And so sometimes it feels like there's a real internal battle between the autism going, I really need this to function, please, otherwise it's going to be chaos in here and I'm going to be worried and anxious and distracted and dysregulated, and can we just sit down and do the thing? And ADHD is like, boring, I don't want to sit down and do the thing, I want to go and get a Costa, I want to go and watch some TV, I want to go and do something cool and unexpected. And I mean, that's my daily life, really. But for me, when I was having my autism assessment, I remember saying to the psychiatrist that when I had, I'm going to say quote unquote, I had a breakdown when I was in burnout, what I now realise is autistic burnout and not just general burnout, and was signed off work for a while. It felt like the ADHD part of me had gone into burnout, because I didn't have the drive, I didn't have the energy to do any of the things that I needed to do. Planning, it just felt overwhelming, and sort of thinking too far ahead into the future was no longer exciting. It was terrifying and too overwhelming, because it was coming at it from a place of a lack of energy, thinking like, how am I ever going to do these things that we're thinking about doing in the future if I'm really struggling to even like do basic things like wash and dress and get the kids ready for school. So it genuinely it felt like I had an ADHD burnout, and my autism was suddenly fronting the show and was like, oh my God, we do not like the spotlight. I do not want to be out here. So that was, and still is, quite an interesting thing to reflect on for me. How it shows up for me now, that I'm not in so much burnout, is that in my work calendar, again, all of the different types of tasks are colour coordinated. I will plan time in my work calendar for doing various different types of tasks. But then when it comes time to initiate doing those tasks, am I able to do so? Not so much. And it can be a real struggle. I need the urgency of a deadline sometimes in order to get my brain to shift gears. So I'll have because they talk about, if you're going to be efficient, time blocking. That's a thing that people can do. You time block and you put that time in your planner or your calendar or your diary, and then you do the things at the times that you've said. And that would be a lovely thing, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be nice? Oh, I'm going to spend an hour doing this today. And then you actually do that hour of the thing that you said you were going to. Wow. People actually do live their lives like that. There are people that have the ability to do those kinds of things. So I am great at the planning and the organising, but the ability to actually then carry out the plans that I have made, challenging to say the least. Unless there's like they say, an idea of novelty about it, fantastic, or an urgency about it. I think my nervous system has lived with that sense of panic as a driving factor for most of my life. And it's now, as I'm sort of unmasking and getting to know myself a little bit more, it is struggling without that sort of fire at my feet to keep me motivated to get things done. For the girls, my eldest is a little bit more like me. She quite likes a tidy space. She likes things to be organised. Sometimes the thought of organising it's too overwhelming for her, but she will just kind of do it systematically. And she's already got good habits going in order to keep herself moving forward, if you like. So she will get her clothes out the night before school and get everything, if she's doing skincare or whatever, she'll get it all set up ready for the morning, because she knows that first thing in the morning she is not going to want to be doing that. So she does get herself organised. She will make a packed lunch the night before. She sets herself a timer on her phone for when she's got to leave to get the bus. Like, she can be really organised, and when those systems work for her, they work beautifully. They don't always work, because sometimes tiredness and overwhelm comes into play, and no matter any of the systems that she has put in place, she will fall. And we are, as being in the first year at high school, we are experiencing some fluctuation in terms of her planning and her executive dysfunction in general, really. So she has systems in place and she makes them work for her, but they're not always sufficient, and sometimes she just can't overcome what is going on for her internally. Little one, obviously being a bit younger, she has more support from us to do things. Her bedroom is like a car crash, and I've lost count of the number of times that I've gone in, I've tidied it for her. She has got boxes to put things in, she's got little cubby holes, she's got a number of storage solutions. She's also got about 2.5 million soft toys, and they take over the entire space. It's not a big room, I'm not going to lie. But she just cannot keep it organised. And she has actually said to me, Mummy, I really appreciate that you tidy it sometimes, but sometimes I don't like it, because when you tidy it up, I don't know where things are. And even though it looks messy in here, I know where everything is. So when you tidy it and put it away, I don't know where to find it. And I was like, that's quite a mature attitude for you, for a young person of your age. But I get it, but it's not a place that I can be for very long, because the chaos of it absolutely makes my skin crawl. So I tend to try and stay out of that space as much as I can. And then the final thing that I wanted to mention today is time awareness or time management. So you might have seen things about time blindness, and I find this really interesting. This was something I didn't think I had a problem with until I actually started to think about it. And as a child, once I'd learned to tell the time, I always had a watch that was 5 minutes fast. My car clock was always 5 minutes fast. I always liked to have a watch that was 5 minutes fast. Now, at the time, I couldn't have told you why. It just like gave me a perverse little sense of pleasure to have my watch 5 minutes fast. But looking back on it now, I think that was a masking technique. It was a little sort of scaffold that I'd put in for myself, so that I knew that I had 5 minutes to be late, where I wouldn't actually be late. I'd be getting there on time. I mean, don't ask me how it works. I've no idea why that worked for my brain, but it just did. It just worked for my brain. And even now, I tend to keep the cooker clock, the oven clock, a couple of minutes faster than all the other clocks in the house, because it kind of gives me a kick up the butt. If I think I'm late, but I'm not actually late, that's all good. That said, I always aim to get out the door at a certain time every day with with little one now to go to school. And do I ever hit that time? Rarely. We're talking like once or twice a term, are we all ready and out of the door at the time that I want to be ready and out the door? We are perpetually 5 minutes late. Oh my God, 5 minutes late. 5 to 10 minutes late, actually. And it's not even, we're not late, we're just late past the point that I've set myself that I want to get out the door. But I've just had a literal live light bulb moment as I've said that to you. We're always 5 to 10 minutes late. Why did I keep my watch 5 minutes fast when I was young? Interesting. Okay, I'll need to reflect on that because I'm thinking about changing the clocks in the house to be 5 minutes fast, but I don't know how I feel about that because that feels a bit odd. Okay, cool. Gonna have to grapple with that. But sometimes it's not even just being late. It's having an awareness in your brain of how long things are, how long things take, what the passage of time feels like. You know, could you accurately predict how long a minute is and say when a minute has passed, or 10 seconds? Like that ability to know what time feels like, if you know what I mean, or the passage of time, what that feels like. But also the ability to know how long a task is going to take. And like I was saying earlier on about if I don't have a clear day or a clear block of time to do something, I find it really difficult to initiate that task or to get on and do even a part of that task. Again, I think this is part of that time management or time blindness, because it feels like I don't have enough time. So I might as well not get started because I'm just going to get into it and get into the flow of it, and then I'm going to have to stop. That also comes with sort of task initiation or task switching, which I'm going to talk about another time. But yeah, having that awareness of how much time something is going to take. And for me, it's almost like a fear of, what if something takes longer than I've planned for? What am I going to do? How am I then going to pick up that thing and do it at another time? Because that's going to require the motivation. It's going to require me to find another time to do it. And what if I don't have enough time? And then there's a lot of what ifs come into it and a bit of anxiety. But also, if something doesn't take as long as I'm expecting, what am I going to do with that extra time? And I struggle with this, with being on time for things. My husband loves to be early for stuff. He will get to somewhere much earlier than he needs to be there so that he knows that he's on time. He definitely struggles with time management from that perspective, by the way. And he prefers to be an early bird and get there early. And if there's going to be issues with transport or finding somewhere or whatever, he would rather have much more time and then be early for stuff. I struggle with that because if I'm early for something, what am I supposed to do? I'm like twiddling my thumbs. If I go to an appointment and I'm early, that means I've got longer to wait at the appointment. And if they're running late, it means I've got even longer to wait, and it's like a waste of time. It's really frustrating. I would rather not be rushing and hot and sweaty to get everywhere that I'm trying to go in life. But it's that I hate the thought of being late. I don't want to walk into a room late. If a train is late and that messes up my time, that's really annoying. But equally, it's dead ox if you get somewhere early. I delivered a training course last year in somewhere up north. I can't remember which city it was. But it was a teacher training course, and I was staying overnight in the hotel the night before so that I could get there and I could get set up and get everything ready. And before I had even been for breakfast, so I was in the room setting everything up, and then I was going to go for breakfast before the delegates arrived. One of the delegates arrived at 7:45 in the morning and came in and was like, "Hiya, don't worry about me. I'm just going to sit at the back and I'm going to set my laptop up and I'm just going to do some work." And that really threw me because I was like, I can't relax in this space now and talk to myself and be myself in this space as I'm setting up, because another human being is here really, really early. Like the course didn't start till like 9:30 or something. But obviously that person had wanted to plan and use that time to sort of, I don't know, do some planning or set cover or like whatever it was that they wanted to do. But it really threw me. But even as a teacher, actually, saying that, I liked to get into, I was not the teacher that was walking through the door as the kids were coming in for form or registration or whatever. I had to get into school a good 45 minutes to an hour beforehand so that I had time to get my laptop set up, get my lessons set up for the day, any resources that I needed, to get a cup of tea, to check my emails. Like I needed time to bed down, if you like, and settle in before then starting my day with the children. I couldn't rush and be there just 10 minutes before the start. I'm not that guy. I am not that girl. I'm not the person that gets there just before, but everything else in life I am. It's really odd. But I would be really interested to see how time works for you. If anybody out there wants to leave me some comments or pop onto my TikTok, it's at audhistically.me. I think I've linked it in the show notes. Please do come and let me know how does time work for you, or how does any of those things, executive function wise, work for you. Has any of this resonated with you today? Can you identify yourself in any of the things that we've talked about so far? Executive functioning or executive dysfunction
is absolutely something that you could talk about for hours, and I am determined not to talk about it for hours in one go. So the next episode, episode 3, will be a sort of part 2, if you like, of executive functioning and some of the other things that we can struggle with as autistic ADHD folks. Thank you so much for listening today. Like I say, if you'd like to leave me any comments or feedback, please do. And I will look forward to chatting to you again on the next episode. Take care.